Well, to talk about tonight's debate is Greg Lyle. He is the founder and president of Innovative Research Group. He's been doing research into the campaign. Greg, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I want to begin with how British Columbians are feeling right now. Based on the data that you've been looking at, that you've accumulated, do British Columbians feel it's time for a change, or are they willing to give David Eby and the NDP another term?
So David Eby's being caught up in the whirlwind that's catching up the whole country. So increasingly, Canadians and British Columbians are feeling very frustrated in their economic circumstances, not in the old way we used to be concerned about the economy. They're not concerned about losing jobs. They're concerned about their ability to get ahead. And that's you can call that standard of living, affordability, what have you. Housing is really a critical issue, especially in BC and especially among young people.
So that is what's catching them up, in the macro, if you will. But without a doubt, this is also the result of BC United and really that leader's decision to suspend the party's campaign. And a reminder to people at home, BC United is the former BC Liberal Party. What has happened to the former BC Liberal vote? Because all of a sudden it came from a cakewalk for the NDP to one where they may not actually win come Election Day.
Sure. Well, the BC United were in great trouble already. The Conservatives had basically pulled in all of the center-right vote, leaving the BC United with only about 10% of the vote. And so they just sort of recognized the writing on the wall when they shut their campaign down. So that's maybe a quarter of the vote that the BC United or the BC Liberals used to get. And the vote that was remaining with them has split pretty evenly between the BC Conservatives and the BC NDP. So it didn't end up making that much of a difference. The Conservatives were already on the rise. They were already very strong. And what you see when you look at people that say that they always voted BC Liberal sometimes or never voted BC Liberal is that you've got people that always voted BC Liberal voting NDP, and you've got people that never voted BC Liberal voting for the BC Conservatives. So it's a new game in town.
Okay, a new game in town, which means that we're what, about a week and a half from voting day in BC. How are things looking between the parties right now?
So the BC Conservatives have got the bigger wave, right? They're riding the anger and frustration that people have, particularly younger people. The BC NDP are an old-style political machine. They have a very strong ground game. They have hundreds of people organized in their campaign. They planned it out months in advance. And so, when you look at those two things together, you end up with a very, very tight race. In our numbers, what we saw in September was the Conservatives lost some of the edge that they come out of the summer with, and the BC NDP, with a very aggressive negative campaign against John Rusted and the BC Conservatives, were effective at closing that gap between themselves and the BC Conservatives. So now it's close. Maybe not as close as it looks because of the way the seats are falling.
Okay, what does that mean then? What does that translate into?
Well, you can see, as I mentioned, that they've shaken up the cart in terms of where traditional votes are. So we do see the BC Conservatives looking better in what we call north of the Malahat, places like Nanaimo, Parksville, Comox, Courtenay than the BC Liberals ever did. But on the other hand, the BC NDP are stronger on the west side of the Lower Mainland, the North Shore, the west side of Vancouver and Richmond, and they're also doing quite well in parts of what we call south of the Fraser, South Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, better than they ever used to do. And so right now, when we look at those breaks, it doesn't look like the Conservatives are breaking through enough in traditional NDP area to make up for the NDP doing well in traditional free enterprise areas.
Yeah, interesting to have those numbers as we really enter the last stretch. I have only about 20 seconds. Quickly, what will you be watching out for in tonight's debate?
Who frames the election? So the NDP is basically trying to define this election as safe change versus scary change, and right now it looks like they're winning. Rusted needs to define it as real change versus no change.
Okay, Greg Lyle, really appreciate this. Hopefully we'll speak again soon. Thank you for this.
Thank you.